good evening. It's that time again. In a previous video or two, we'd looked at some ceramics and plastics. So the obvious step forward is to look at some professional grade body armor, namely the yielding type, the fabric type. So you can see already this one, I've already cut the sleeve open because I had to get rid of the stitching and that took too long. This is an over shoulder panel, so the sort of panel that covers the gap between the point of your shoulder and the bottom of your neck. Manufacturer's label, Aegis Engineering, batch number, date of manufacture 15th of January 2003. So it's currently 20 years old. This was tested about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. No, 2 years ago. So it's about 18 years old. So I believe that's slightly beyond the manufacturer's warranted life. Sizing on there. Important is the rating on this. I have a second panel for which the label unfortunately came off, but they're both rated the same. So HG1, that's handgun level 1. I'll post the stats for what that actually means. And KR2, so that's knife resistant level 2. Knives are surprisingly difficult to stop. What is missing from this is the spike resistance, and we'll come to what that means in a little bit. So let's get on with it and have a look at this panel. So first things first, we have the waterproof cover. We have some rounds that ended up embedded in it. This was tested with 2 of these. These were both recovered from inside the panel. These are 357 Magnum solid slugs, and this assortment of shrapnel here are some of the 2.2 long rifle rounds and fragments that have come out of this panel. So this was shot with 2 357 rounds and 20 2.2 long rifle from a distance of 10 meters. Waterproof cover, this stuff doesn't like to get wet. In fact, body armor works less well when it's wet. So these waterproof covers are important. They have no inherent ballistic value themselves. They're simply there to keep it dry. This might look sort of all cuddly and soft, but that is ridiculously strong fiber. It's also apparently a pain in the ass to get off your fingers. Okay, each panel is just over 30 centimeters long. At its widest point, about 10 centimeters, and they go down to about 5 centimeters. But again, this is medium size, so you can expect a size difference for different panels. This consists of 20 layers of this fabric. So you can see the fabric actually freely moves between my fingers. If I can zoom in and show you, let me peel off this. Oh, I can't take that one, that's tagged through, as you'll see why in a second. Let me hold it up to the camera. You can see the actual nature of the fabric itself and how it's formed. And put my finger on the other side of this. You can see one of the bullet penetrations. And now you get an understanding of how the mechanism works. As it pierces, each layer in turn is having to stretch the fabric, it's having to deform the entire width of the fiber. So larger panels are more effective because there's simply more fabric to have to move. And as it pushes through each layer, it's having to tear, rip, and move each layer in turn. So as it goes through, it's having to move more and more. So the net result is that by the time you start to get further on, see here, it hasn't actually torn any of the layers at all, but it has deformed them. It's pulled them out from where they've been woven together. And this is where you get your deformation comes in. So this is how it stopped it. So within that 20 layers there, by the time we get to the 20th layer, there's no sort of real dent or deformation. There's some distortion of the fabric though from 357 Magnum. Now let's have a look, let's zoom back out and have a look at a smaller scale, because trapped in there it is, trapped in here. Obviously we have some of these little pieces. Let's show this one up to the camera first. So hard to see maybe, unless you zoom in, but clear as the day to me, are these little lines. Put them in the middle of the screen. And what these are, these marks, these clearly show where the round has actually been tearing through the fabric. It's taken so much energy to tear its way through the fabric that it's actually completely flattened these rounds. And okay, these are only small, light rounds, but they travel quite quickly. They're certainly plenty dangerous. Oh, this is the best one probably for showing how hard these fibers are to snap and how much energy it takes. These are marks it's left in the metal. And it's done the same in the 357 as well. You can actually see the deformation over this. Now, I wasn't wearing this when it was shot. That would be a terrible idea. This was fired back onto I was going to say a pumpkin, but it was some kind of giant squash. As I didn't want a hard backing like a piece of timber. People aren't hard like timber, they're much more pumpkin-esque, so that seemed a more suitable backing. So, yeah, look at these marks on it. You can actually almost see the pattern of the thread on there. But trapped within here, let's hold this up to the camera. Try to decide which way it went in. I can't tell now because I've had this apart a couple of times to show people. Oh, it went in from this side. There we are. So look, it's gone in here and it's actually transitioned across slightly as it's been moved through the fabric. The resistance of the fabric as it's been pulling one layer into the other, it's actually started to move the round from one side to another. So each of these fibers is being dragged through from one layer to another, and the energy of the round is being absorbed by having to move and snap hundreds and hundreds or thousands of little fibers until finally it runs out of energy and it becomes completely entangled. Let's see if we get a good view of that. Inside there. So you can see here where it pokes through just how that works. You can see where it's not got up to and where it's up to there. So this is what we call a yielding type of fabric armor. It's obviously not intended to stop 20 plus rounds, and it did surprisingly well. Most of what did go through, obviously when this is shot, this has been bunched up and it's formed quite sort of tight sort of blocks of the fabric as it's been tightened up like this as the round's gone through. So most of the penetrations that went through were just clipping the edges of this and not actually hitting the body. It's one of the reasons why these little thin pieces are less effective than a large panel, because it just bunches up as you'd kind of expect. But you can see here where the 357 hit, it's just tangled all up. So with that one said, let's move on to the other panel. Okay, panel 2. This is the same waterproof outer as before. I've taken the insides out, as you'll see why in a second. Yes, there are some penetrations through this. This was shot with a 30 caliber rifle, and unsurprisingly the rounds went straight through. But then it's not designed to stop a 30 caliber rifle, so that should surprise nobody. The outer layer and the actual ballistic test from it are rather irrelevant to what it looks like. Now, this is still all a bit deformed, so let's put a weight on it. So what do you notice first of all, other than the obvious bullet holes? Well, what you should notice is this. This looks nothing like this. Why not? Let's have a moment of pause to debate that. Okay, moment's over. You figured out why? That's because this, although it's the same as this, and yes, it looks slightly different size because I believe this was a small panel. This has the spike resistance rating because this is resin impregnated. I wonder if you can hear that. So this is kind of stiff. It's almost papery. and what it looks like. Don't worry about the tape. That was added by me to try and hold this together before. This has been impregnated with resin, so it doesn't move in the same way as this. It's actually incredibly bloody tough. This is just a way to hold it flat because it's all deformed. You have the same number of layers, but they're all this kind of, damn it, they're all this kind of paper material. That's really just annoying, frankly. And then one extra thick one, which is made, let's have a look at that one actually, on the back. So this is a very backing piece. This is extra thick, so this is actually more than one layer fixed together. I can't even separate them. More than one layer. In fact, you can hear it click there. More than one layer held together and compressed with resin. So these are put under a press with the resin impregnated fabrics, pushed together, and together they form this additional spike rating. So in a nutshell, this and this have the same sort of ratings against rifle fire, as in almost nothing, handgun fire I meant, and knives. But this, because this has been impregnated with resin, this has the additional resistance against spikes. Why don't we test that quick and dirty now? All right, very high-tech pool noodle. This is going to be our arm, and this is going to be our fabric. Now, I don't have an ice pick. I have this little thing, and I have no intention of hurting myself. But if you imagine this covering the person's shoulder, and this as the ice pick, have a look there on camera. What you see happen, and what you'll see is how the impact of this point is over just a tiny area, not shock, and has only managed to get through the fiber here. But look at the stress pattern in the fiber. This is how it stops bullets as well, because all that energy is taken in radiating through. And in fact, you can see it deform on the other side. In fact, it's left a little dent in my pool noodle. Now, that wasn't stabbed particularly hard in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, I can probably get that back. Let's move on. I'm going to stab this pretty hard and see if it goes through. This will be interesting. I can't remember off the top of my head what the Home Office spike energy rating is. And obviously this is well used, so this is highly unscientific. I'll post the Home Office data shortly, but let's have a go with this. Okay, that didn't go through, but boy, I can feel, oh, ow. Okay, the tip of that has actually gone through there and is actually sharp. I'll hold that up to the camera. You can just feel the tip. In fact, there we go, look at that. Right up the camera. So that was not much effort, energy rather, used at all. And indeed, this cheap little plastic handled awl has indeed penetrated 20 layers of Kevlar fiber that in other circumstances is sufficient to stop a bullet. This is why these things are dangerous. So, having looked at that, let's try it with this. Okay, we have this spread over our noodle arm. I'm trying to find a nice flat bit, make sure it's all nice and tight. First up, the light stab, as we'll say. Think back to the earlier test where you got to see the stress patterns in the fabric. This is resin impregnated, virtually none, and that did not feel like that did much at all. No, not even slightly. I have no optimism for getting through this with this whatsoever. So, all right, one last go, and then we're going to put some good force into this. and hopefully not stab ourselves at the same time. Alright, well, I didn't hold back by any means. Oh my god, that is doing absolutely nothing. Not even a deformation, not a sausage. Let's get rid of the pool noodle. Oh, where was that? That was right here. Oh, has that even gone through? 1, 2, 3. I still see the mark. 4, 4. Yeah, it's still there. 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I can still see it. 8. I think we're stuck at about 8. Maybe 9 if I'm being ingenerous. So less than half of the way through. So there you go. Okay, that's it for now. Let's have a very quick recap. 357 Magnum, 2.2 long rifle, pretty common caliber ammunition, easily stopped by 20 layers of woven fabric, and easily meets this kind of requirement. Again, we'll post the data for what that data actually means, because they're different to the American National Institute of Justice standards. But armor that stops bullets cannot stop a 99-cent pokey tool from Walmart. This, however, because this has the spike rating, I couldn't get even halfway through this using, frankly, as much, if not more, force than I did with this. It acts in a slightly different way, and this is resin impregnated. So it's obviously stiffer, so it's less comfortable, but it's more effective in some ways. That's it for now. I hope you found this really interesting. I'd be fascinated to hear from some of your comments. And the next one I'm going to look at is a large panel. Thank you for now. Good night.